First contact in the deep. Dr. Sarah Chen never expected to make first contact 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean. The Deep Sea Research Station, Echo 7, was designed to study hydrothermal vents, not alien spacecraft. Yet here she was, staring through the reinforced viewport at something decidedly not of Earth origin. The object had crashed through the ocean surface 6 hours ago, their sensors initially registering it as a meteor. But meteors didn't usually emit pulses of electromagnetic energy, nor did they typically maintain structural integrity after impact. This thing, whatever it was, had survived its violent descent mostly intact, a sleek silver teardrop shape about the size of a small yacht. "Control, are you seeing this?" Sarah's voice was steady despite her racing heart. Years of deep-sea research had taught her to maintain composure even in the most surprising situations. "Affirmative, Dr. Chen. We're getting clear footage. Any signs of activity?" Sarah adjusted the external floods, sweeping their beams across the vessel's metallic surface. "Nothing yet, but—" She stopped mid-sentence as a faint glow emanated from what appeared to be a viewport on the craft's side. "Wait. There's something." The glow intensified, and through the crystalline material, Sarah caught a glimpse of movement. A face pressed against the alien window. Unmistakably a face, though not a human one. The features were delicate, almost elfin, with large eyes that reflected the station's lights like a cat's. The being's skin had a subtle blue tint, and what looked like fine, translucent filaments floated around its head like underwater hair. But what struck Sarah most was the expression of desperate fear in those eyes. "There's someone alive in there," she announced, already moving to the station's airlock, "and they're running out of time." "Dr. Chen, protocol dictates." Protocol didn't account for finding a drowning alien 3 kilometers under the Pacific. Sarah cut in, pulling on her pressure suit with practiced efficiency. "Their hull is breached. I can see water inside the cabin. If we don't act now, we'll be responsible for the first alien death on Earth, and I'm not having that on my conscience." The rescue that followed would later be described as either the most reckless or most heroic act in human history, depending on who you asked. Sarah, with only her pressure suit and a spare emergency breathing apparatus, managed to reach the alien craft through the crushing depths. The emergency release mechanism on the craft's hatch was surprisingly similar to human designs. Perhaps some principles of engineering were truly universal. Inside, she found the alien survivor struggling to stay in a rapidly diminishing air pocket. The being was humanoid but slender, with elongated limbs and those haunting large eyes. It wore what appeared to be a torn environment suit of its own, damaged in the crash. Communication was impossible through their suits, but Sarah didn't need words to convey her intentions. She held out the spare breathing apparatus, demonstrating its use on herself first. The alien understood immediately, accepting the device with trembling hands that had too many joints but worked just fine for the task at hand. The journey back to Echo 7 was tense. The alien was clearly injured, moving with difficulty through the water. Sarah had to support most of their weight, fighting against the ocean's pressure and her own mounting exhaustion. But failure wasn't an option, not when she could feel the alien's heartbeat, so similar to her own, pulsing with the determination to live. They reached the airlock just as Sarah's oxygen reserves dipped into the red. As the chamber cycled, she finally got a proper look at her rescue. The alien was perhaps a head taller than her, with that blue-tinted skin that seemed to have a subtle luminescence. Those filaments she'd seen earlier were indeed hair-like structures, now lying flat against their skull, each strand seeming to contain tiny points of light, like fiber optic cables. The alien removed the breathing apparatus and spoke. The words were unlike anything Sarah had ever heard, but the tone of gratitude was unmistakable. Then, to her shock, the being reached out and touched her helmet with one of those many-jointed hands. Immediately, a sensation like static electricity coursed through her suit, and she heard a voice in her mind, as clear as if someone were speaking directly into her ear. "Thank you, brave one. I am Nixel, And you have saved me from a death I did not expect to face so far from home." Sarah stared, her scientific mind racing to process what was happening. You can communicate telepathically. A simple technology, embedded in my neural network," Nixel explained through the strange connection. "Though I never expected to use it with." They paused, searching for the right word. "Humans, yes, that is what you call yourselves." Before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring throughout Echo 7. The station's sensors were picking up more objects entering Earth's atmosphere, larger ones this time. "They found me," Nixel said, their large eyes widening with fear. "And they will not show your world the mercy you have shown me." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean's cold. She had just saved one alien's life, but in doing so, she might have placed all of humanity in danger. Yet as she looked at Nixel, she knew she wouldn't have made a different choice. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. And that was just the beginning of how humanity found itself thrust onto the galactic stage, all because one deep-sea researcher couldn't ignore a cry for help. Cultural exchange. The next 48 hours at Echo 7 were a blur of activity. While the station's small crew worked to conceal their position from the approaching vessels, Sarah and Nixel engaged in a crash course of cultural exchange that would have made any anthropologist envious. "Your species is remarkable," Nixel observed, watching Sarah repair a damaged pressure sensor. Their luminescent hair filaments pulsed with gentle light as they spoke through their neural link. "You achieve so much with such simple tools." Sarah couldn't help but smile at what seemed like a backhanded compliment. Sometimes the simple solutions are the best ones. Not everything needs to be quantum encoded or psychically enhanced. The alien's large eyes blinked in their peculiar sideways manner. "That is precisely what makes you remarkable. My people, the Zorathi, became so dependent on our advanced technology that we lost the ability to improvise, to think beyond our established parameters. It is why they hunt me now." Sarah's hand stilled on her work. "You still haven't told me why they're chasing you." Nixel's hair filaments dimmed slightly. A gesture Sarah had learned indicated distress. "I am what my people call a keeper of ways. We maintain the historical archives, including records of how our civilization developed. When I discovered evidence that our ruling council had begun deliberately suppressing our people's capacity for independent thought, I couldn't remain silent." The alien moved closer to the viewport, staring out into the dark ocean. "They have developed a neural inhibitor, disguised as an upgrade to our collective network. It would render our entire species completely dependent on the Council's guidance. When I attempted to warn others, they branded me a traitor." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "They're willing to lobotomize your entire species just to maintain control. They would call it optimization." Nixel replied bitterly. 3,000 years of technological advancement, and we risk becoming little more than biological computers, unable to think or feel beyond our programming." Before Sarah could respond, the station's communication system crackled to life. "Dr. Chen, we're picking up transmission attempts from the approaching vessels. They're asking for communication with any local authority." Sarah exchanged glances with Nixel. "They're being surprisingly diplomatic for pursuers. They must realize they're in unknown territory," Nixel explained. "The Council fears the unknown more than anything. They will try to appear peaceful while they assess your capabilities." Sarah thought for a moment, then made a decision that would alter the course of human history. Control patched them through to my station. It's time we showed them exactly what humanity is capable of. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a face similar to Nixel's but harder, more angular. The being's hair filaments were rigidly controlled, pulsing with precise, measured patterns. "I am Overseer Vatch of the Zorathi Council," the alien announced, their words translated through some unseen mechanism. "We track a dangerous fugitive to this sector. Your cooperation in apprehending this criminal will be noted and rewarded." Sarah straightened her back, meeting the Overseer's gaze. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth's Deep Ocean Research Station, Echo 7. We are a scientific installation, not a military or diplomatic one. However, I feel compelled to inform you that any being seeking asylum on Earth is entitled to due process under our laws. The overseer's expression didn't change, but their hair filaments flared briefly. Your laws do not apply to Zorathi citizens. The fugitive possesses dangerous technology that could destabilize your entire civilization. Surely you understand the need to maintain order. What I understand, Sarah replied carefully, is that Earth has a long history of protecting those who speak out against oppression. If you're truly concerned about destabilizing influences, perhaps we should discuss your plans for neural inhibition on a planetary scale. The change in the overseer's demeanor was subtle but unmistakable. Their hair filaments went completely dark. You have been corrupted by the fugitive's lies. This is most unfortunate. We had hoped to handle this situation diplomatically. Diplomacy works both ways, Sarah countered. You're in Earth's waters now. Whatever technology you possess, whatever threats you might make, know this. Humans have a long history of standing up to bullies, no matter how powerful they might be. The screen went dark, and Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. You do realize you just challenged one of the most technologically advanced civilizations in this sector of the galaxy. Nixel's tone was a mixture of awe and concern. Sarah shrugged, turning back to her repair work. Someone had to. Besides, they're not the only ones who can innovate. While we've been talking, I've been thinking about your neural network technology. If we could adapt it, find a way to protect minds rather than control them. Nixel's hair filaments began to pulse with increasing brightness. You believe you can modify our technology, but your species hasn't even achieved regular spaceflight. Maybe not, Sarah agreed, a slight smile playing at her lips. But we got something better than advanced technology. We've got imagination, determination, and most importantly, we've got nothing to lose. Now, tell me more about how these neural interfaces of yours work. We've got about 6 hours before those ships reach Earth's orbit, and I've got an idea that's either brilliant or completely insane. As Sarah and Nixel bent over the station's workbench, combining human ingenuity with alien technology, neither of them could know that they were about to change the course of not one, but 2 civilizations forever. Looming threat. The surface of the Pacific Ocean churned as military vessels from 5 different nations converged on the coordinates above Echo 7. In the 6 hours since Sarah's confrontation with Overseer Vach, Earth's governments had moved with unprecedented speed and cooperation. The presence of advanced alien ships in Earth's orbit had a way of putting petty national differences into perspective. 3 kilometers below, Sarah's hands moved steadily despite her exhaustion, making final adjustments to what she and Nixel had created. The device looked deceptively simple, a hybrid of human and Zorathi technology that combined the alien's neural interface with modified deep-sea communication arrays. You understand the risks? Nixel asked, their hair filaments flickering with concern. If this fails, the feedback could permanently damage your neural pathways. Sarah secured the last connection. Better than letting them turn your entire species into mindless drones. Besides, humans are surprisingly resilient. You should see what we used to do before we invented proper anesthesia. The station's comm system crackled. Dr. Chen, the Zorathi ships have entered the mesosphere. They're demanding immediate surrender of the fugitive, or they'll begin what they're calling atmospheric correction procedures. Atmospheric correction. Sarah looked at Nixel. They will alter your planet's atmosphere to be uninhabitable for humans, but perfect for Zorathi physiology, Nixel explained, their voice tight with anger. It is a favorite tactic of the Council. Transform rather than destroy. They believe it to be more efficient. Sarah's jaw set in determination. Well, they're about to learn about human efficiency. Control, patch me through to the surface fleet, and connect me to the Zorathi ships as well. It's time we showed them what happens when you threaten our planet. The main screen split into multiple feeds, grim-faced military commanders on one side, the cold visage of Overseer Vach on the other. "This is your final opportunity," Vatch announced. "Surrender the fugitive, or we will begin atmospheric transformation. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields, and your technology is centuries behind ours. There is no logical choice but submission." Sarah smiled, the kind of smile that humans get when they're about to do something either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. "You know, that's your problem right there. You think everything has to be logical. But humans, we run on something else entirely. We run on hope, on courage, and sometimes," she attached the neural interface to her temple, "on absolutely crazy ideas that just might work." She nodded to Nixel, who activated the device. Immediately, Sarah's consciousness expanded, connecting not just with Nixel's neural network, but with every communication system in range. The sensation was overwhelming. Military channels, satellite feeds, and most importantly, the Zorathi ship's own neural network, all flowing through her mind. What is this?" Vatch's composed demeanor cracked for the first time. "This," Sarah managed through gritted teeth, "is humanity's gift to the Zorathi people. You wanted to control minds. Let's see how you handle free will instead." Through the neural link, Sarah began broadcasting not data or commands, but pure, raw human experiences. The joy of discovery, the thrill of innovation, the satisfaction of solving problems in unexpected ways. She poured it all into the Zorathi network. And alongside these emotions came memories. Humans throughout history standing up against overwhelming odds, choosing freedom over safety, choosing difficult truths over comfortable lies. On the screens, chaos erupted aboard the Zorathi ships. Crew members whose neural networks had been locked down for generations suddenly experienced something they had never known: complete freedom of thought. "Stop this immediately," Vatch commanded, but there was fear in their voice now. "You cannot comprehend the damage you are doing." "Actually," Sarah countered, even as sweat beaded on her forehead from the strain, "I comprehend it perfectly. You spent so long convinced that control equals stability that you forgot what your people could achieve when they're free to think for themselves. Allow me to remind you." Through the neural link, Sarah could feel it happening. Zorathi minds awakening, breaking free of their artificial constraints. Centuries of suppressed creativity, innovation, and independent thought came rushing back. The effect cascaded through their neural network like a tidal wave of consciousness. Aboard the Zorathi ships, crew members began removing their neural inhibitors. The rigid patterns of their hair filaments dissolved into chaos before settling into natural flowing rhythms that expressed their true thoughts and emotions. "Overseer," one of the Zorathi crew announced, "we are disconnecting from the Council's control protocols. We choose freedom." Vatch's face contorted with rage and disbelief. "This is impossible. You cannot simply choose." "That's exactly what they can do," Sarah interrupted, though her vision was starting to blur from the strain. "That's what being human has taught us. There's always a choice. And right now, your people are choosing to think for themselves." The effect spread from ship to ship as the awakened Zorathi crew members helped others break free from their mental constraints. Vatch's transmission cut off abruptly, and Nixel reported that the Overseer's ship was retreating from Earth's orbit, pursuing a trajectory back to Zorathi space. Sarah felt her knees buckle as Nixel disconnected her from the neural interface. The alien caught her before she could fall, their hair filaments glowing with joy and concern. "You did it," Nixel whispered. "You actually did it. You gave my people back their minds." "We did it," Sarah corrected, managing a weak smile. "Human creativity, Zorathi technology. Turns out we make a pretty good team." But as the adrenaline of victory faded, Sarah realized this wasn't the end. The Zorathi Council wouldn't take this defeat lying down, and Earth had just announced its presence to the galaxy in a very dramatic way. The real challenge was just beginning. Innovation under pressure. The next 2 weeks transformed Echo 7 from a deep-sea research station into humanity's first interstellar embassy. 3 Zorathi ships remained in Earth orbit, now crewed by those who had chosen freedom over the Council's control. Their presence drew more attention than anyone had anticipated, not just from Earth's governments, but from other spacefaring species who suddenly found humanity very interesting indeed. Sarah stood at her familiar viewport, watching schools of deep-sea fish dart through the station's external lights. Behind her, Nixel was engaged in a heated discussion with the holographic projections of various Earth officials and Zorathi ship captains. The Council has already begun mobilizing their primary fleet, one of the Zorathi captains reported, their hair filaments pulsing with urgent patterns. They will not allow this rebellion to stand, especially not with an emerging species involved. Then we better make sure we're ready for them, Sarah interjected, turning from the viewport. The neural interface experience had left her with something. A permanent connection to Zorathi technology that neither she nor Nixel fully understood yet. She could sense the anxiety rippling through the alien neural networks, but also their determination. Dr. Chen, a UN official, spoke up. While we appreciate the gravity of the situation, Earth simply doesn't have the technological capability to withstand a full-scale alien invasion. Even with the support of these defectors, we're drastically outgunned. Sarah smiled, the kind of smile that had started to make both humans and Zorathi nervous. It usually meant she had an idea that defied conventional wisdom. Actually, I think we have exactly what we need. We just need to look at it differently. She moved to the station's main console, pulling up schematics that represented a merger of human and Zorathi technology. The Council's biggest advantage has always been their neural network technology, but now we understand it, and more importantly, we understand its weaknesses. The Council will have altered their network protocols, one of the Zorathi captains objected. They will not be vulnerable to the same strategy twice. They don't need to be, Sarah replied. Because we're not going to attack their network, we're going to give them a new one. Nixel, remember how you said your people became too dependent on their technology? Well, what if we could turn that dependency against them? Nixel's hair filaments brightened with sudden understanding. You want to create an alternative neural network, one that would compete with the Council's control. Better, Sarah said, expanding the schematics. I want to create a network that doesn't control anything, one that simply connects. Humans have been developing social networks for decades. We understand how information flows, how ideas spread. What if we combine that knowledge with Zorathi technology? The next hours were a blur of collaborative innovation. Human software engineers worked alongside Zorathi technicians, combining Earth's understanding of social psychology with alien quantum computing. They called it the Freedom Net, a neural network that enhanced connection and creativity instead of controlling it. Sarah's experience with the neural interface proved invaluable. She could intuitively understand how to bridge the gap between human and Zorathi thinking, helping create protocols that worked with both species' natural thought patterns. But the Council wasn't idle. Reports came in of ships moving through Zorathi space, targeting any communities that showed signs of independent thinking. The race was on. They needed to deploy the Freedom Net before the Council could lock down their entire civilization. There's a problem, Nixel announced one day, their hair filaments dim with concern. The network's range. Even with all our combined technology, we can't broadcast it far enough to reach the Zorathi homeworld. Sarah had been expecting this obstacle. Then we don't broadcast it. We let them come to us. She turned to the UN officials. How many communications satellites does Earth have in orbit? Thousands, but they're not nearly powerful enough. They don't need to be powerful. They just need to be numerous. Sarah's fingers flew over the console, illustrating her plan. The Council's ships will create a blockade around Earth. They have to prevent our ideas from spreading. But that means they'll be surrounding a planet that's already wrapped in a web of communications technology. We turned every satellite, every deep-sea communications array, every cell phone tower into a node in the Freedom Net. You want to turn Earth itself into one giant transmitter. A Zorathi captain's hair filaments twisted in amazement. Exactly. When the Council arrives, they'll be walking into the largest neural network humanity and the Zorathi have ever created. They won't be able to shut it down without destroying their own ability to coordinate their forces. The plan was audacious, technically challenging, and probably a little insane. In other words, perfectly human. As Earth's governments mobilized their technological resources and the Free Zorathi modified their ship's communications arrays, Sarah couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Council had feared that contact with humanity would destabilize their civilization, and they had been absolutely right, just not in the way they had expected. But time was running out. Long-range sensors detected the Council's fleet approaching, hundreds of ships strong. Earth had less than 72 hours to transform itself into the largest free-thinking network in the galaxy. As Sarah watched humans and Zorathi working side by side, she realized that regardless of the coming battle's outcome, both species had already been transformed by their contact. The question was no longer whether humanity was ready for the galaxy, but whether the galaxy was ready for humanity's particular brand of innovative chaos. Legacy of trust. The Council's fleet arrived exactly as predicted, emerging from faster-than-light travel in a display of power meant to intimidate. Over 200 ships took up position around Earth, their sleek forms blocking out stars as they created a perfect blockade pattern. 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific, Sarah Chen watched the tactical displays with an outward calm that belied her racing heart. Beside her, Nixel's hair filaments pulsed with nervous energy as they monitored the Freedom Net status. All planetary systems are integrated, Nixel reported. Every communications device on Earth is now part of the network. But Sarah, they hesitated. The power requirements are straining your planet's infrastructure. We just need to hold it together long enough. Sarah's fingers danced across the control panel, making final adjustments. How many of the Council ships are in optimal broadcasting range? 187. The others are maintaining distance, likely as a reserve force. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a face Sarah had hoped never to see again. Overseer Vatch looked different now. Their features were sharper, hair filaments rigidly controlled by what appeared to be mechanical restraints. So, Vatch's voice carried an artificial harmony that sent chills down Sarah's spine. The primitive species thinks it can challenge the collected wisdom of 3,000 years of Zorathi development. Your interference has already caused enough chaos. Surrender now, and we may yet preserve some of your species' useful qualities while we correct your troublesome independent tendencies. Sarah stood, facing the screen. You know what I find interesting, Overseer. You keep talking about correction, about control, about making things better through restriction. But in the few weeks we've worked with the Free Zorathi, they've already created technologies that your Council never imagined possible. Temporary anomalies, Vatch dismissed. The result of random neural misfiring that. That's where you're wrong. Sarah interrupted. It's not random. It's freedom. Creativity. The power of minds working together instead of being forced into artificial patterns. And we're about to show you exactly what that looks like. She nodded to Nixel, who initiated the Freedom Net's activation sequence. Immediately, every communication device on Earth began broadcasting on frequencies specifically tuned to Zorathi neural networks. But instead of the focused beam of their previous attempt, this was an omnidirectional cascade of pure human experience. The effect was instantaneous. Council ships closest to Earth began reporting neural network disruptions. But this time, the freedom spreading through their networks carried something extra. 3 weeks of shared human Zorathi innovations, discoveries, and possibilities. What? What is this? Vatch's artificial composure cracked as their own neural implants began receiving the transmission. These designs, these ideas. That's what happens when you let people think freely, Sarah explained, watching as more and more Council ships reported network disruptions. Your people haven't lost their ability to innovate. You just buried it under layers of control. Well, now they're seeing what their freed brothers and sisters have accomplished in just 3 weeks of collaboration with humanity. Through the Freedom Net, Sarah could feel the avalanche of realization sweeping through the council fleet. The Free Zorathi had solved technical problems that had plagued their civilization for centuries, simply by approaching them with human-inspired creativity. They had created art that moved emotions in ways the council had deemed impossible. They had begun to dream again. You cannot. Vatch's mechanical control was failing, their hair filaments beginning to pulse with natural rhythms. The council's wisdom, 3,000 years, is nothing compared to the wisdom of letting people choose their own path. Sarah finished. Your council tried to create perfect order through control. But look at Earth. Billions of humans, all thinking differently, all creating and innovating in their own ways. We're messy, we're chaotic, but we're alive. Really alive. And deep down, your people remember what that feels like. Across the council fleet, crew members were making their choice. The rigid patterns of control dissolved into the organic chaos of free thought. Ship after ship reported their crews disconnecting from the council's networks, choosing instead to join the Freedom Net's open exchange of ideas. Vatch's transmission cut off abruptly. Their command ship attempted to retreat, but found itself surrounded by its own fleet, now crewed by Zorathi, who had chosen freedom over control. In the hours that followed, the transformation spread across the fleet like a wildfire of consciousness. The Free Zorathi, as they came to call themselves, began the long process of reaching out to their homeworld, sharing the gift of freedom that humanity had helped them rediscover. 1 month after Sarah had first pulled a drowning alien from a crashed ship, she stood in front of the United Nations, beside Nixel and representatives of the Free Zorathi. They were there to sign the first interstellar cooperation treaty in Earth's history. Some will say that humanity wasn't ready for this. Sarah addressed the assembly. That we've taken on more than we can handle by involving ourselves in another species' cultural revolution. But I've learned something important about readiness. It's not about having the most advanced technology or the most powerful weapons. It's about having the courage to help others when they need it, the creativity to solve problems in new ways, and the wisdom to know that freedom, though messy, is always worth fighting for. Nixel stepped forward, their hair filaments glowing with pride. The council feared that contact with humanity would destabilize our civilization. They were right, and we are grateful for it. You helped us remember who we were meant to be. And now, together, we can show the galaxy what free minds working together can achieve. As Sarah signed the treaty, she couldn't help but smile at how it had all started, with a simple choice to help someone in need. Humanity's first steps into the galactic community hadn't come through military might or technological superiority, but through something far more powerful. The simple, very human decision to do what was right, regardless of the consequences. The story of humanity and the Zorathi would be told across the galaxy for generations to come. Not as a tale of conquest or confrontation, but as a reminder that sometimes the greatest revolutions start with a single act of kindness, and that freedom, once tasted, becomes a force that no power in the universe can contain.